Rising from nothing to becoming the mob boss of America's most powerful criminal empire ever is no one but the charismatic Frank Costello, the ultimate diplomat, the chessman who was an expert at moving just the right pieces across the board. Frank would do something no other mob boss ever could or would. He was intent on using his brains and intelligence instead of raw violence like the old mustache Petes of the mafia world. Mixing crime with politics, he built for himself the kind of influence that let him pull the right strings at the right time. This way, he became the unsurpassed link between the criminal and the legitimate world. The mafia leader would go on to control entire cities, all the while building up an enormous amount of wealth. And yes, it is Frank Costello who inspired the beloved character of Don Vito Corleone. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, Legendary Figures, and continue watching this video to find out about the real Godfather, the ultimate Machiavellian, who would eventually become the most powerful Don in the history of Cosa Nostra. Where did it all start? Other kids are brought up nice and sent to Harvard and Yale. I was brought up like a mushroom. Francesco Castiglia was born in the small town of Cassano, Italy on January 26, 1981. He grew up in the streets of East Harlem, New York after his family migrated to America in 1895. By age 13, he was a member of the local gang and changed his name to Frank Costello. Starting from petty thefts, the man withdrew from his criminal activities when he was 19. An event took place which turned his entire outlook on life. While we reveal the story behind the man's withdrawal from crimes, press the subscribe button to get more thrilling stories. Back to the story. Frank Costello was arrested for carrying a concealed weapon and spent a year behind bars. Costello then vowed never to use weapons and violence to get what he wanted. Instead, he would use only his brains to get to the top. Frank's ascension in the underworld. But the real pivotal point which changed everything was when Frank met Charles "Lucky" Luciano, a Sicilian who, like Charles, was very ambitious to build an empire. An empire based on his visions, on the principle of organized crime, not the orthodox mafia rules of Mustache Pete's. The two hit it off and became not only good partners in crime, but also good friends. Frank continued to make a good name for himself in the legitimate world. He did so by doing favors for politicians, government officials, and even the police with the promise that they would return the favors down the line. He was rubbing shoulders with celebrities, businessmen, and high echelons of New York. Consequently, Costello became the ultimate link between the criminal and the lawful world. He rightfully earned the title Prime Minister of the Underworld. The diplomatic crime master was the ideal peacemaker. Possessing an aura of authority and respect, he would resolve issues within the gang using little to no violence. It's been quoted that people came to him as they would to a French king giving away boons. Instead of a palace, though, the brethren bowed down to him in the luxurious Waldorf Astoria of New York. Establishing the American mafia, Costello and Luciano met up with other notorious mobsters, namely Vito Genovese, Tommy Three-Finger Brown Luckcheese, Meyer Lansky, and Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. Together they were invincible and started controlling extortion, gambling, and narcotics racketeering. However, it was Arnold the Brain Rothstein who would teach them the most beneficial ins and outs of the business. In 1921, when the American government enforced the Prohibition Law, Arnold Rothstein found a great opportunity for starting bootleg operations. He financed the whole affair, earning millions of dollars for the mob. Arnold would become an important mentor in the lives of Costello, Luciano, and Siegel. The actual turn of tides was after the Castello-Maurice War in 1931, which weakened the already established gangs in the country. The Luciano family took over with Luciano as the boss, Genovese as the underboss, and Costello appointed as the consigliere. Costello seized this opportunity to shine and work on his skills. He controlled numerous gambling rackets which made millions of dollars of profit for the family. His slot machines alone brought in a fortune of wealth. Next boss of the empire. In 1935, it turned out that Lucky was not so lucky after all. Things started to go downhill for him after being prosecuted by Thomas Dewey. Lucky was sentenced to 30 to 50 years in jail for running a brothel and related extortion. With Luciano gone, it meant that Genovese was now the acting boss. This also did not last long. Only a year later, Genovese was indicted for murder. He fled back to Italy to avoid jail time. In whose hands will the mob be now? From his cell in prison, Lucky decided that Costello would now become the new boss of the empire. Without a doubt, Costello proved to be a very successful executive. The Luciano family was more than happy with him because of the massive amount of money he bought for them through his political contacts as well as criminal activities. The Godfather hearings. These hearings were conducted by the U.S. government to expose the criminal underworld and the illegal rackets they were running. More than 600 mob officials testified in these hearings, all of which were aired on TV. This happened in the early 1950s, a time when Costello was at his prime as the most powerful and influential mob leader. He did not allow to broadcast his face in the hearings and did not even answer most of the questions asked. He did answer one question posed by the committee, which was, "What have you done for your country, Mr. Costello?" To which Costello replied, "Paid my tax." At this, the courtroom erupted in laughter. The major downside of these hearings was that they were widely broadcasted. This put a lot of pressure on Costello, as the law enforcement knew much more about his activities than the general public, and were out to get him. Costello's conflict with Genovese. In 1957, charges against Genovese were dropped due to lack of evidence. He was back in America as a free man. As expected, it did not sit well with him that Costello was now the boss, whereas he was only a capital regime. To reclaim his spot, he could not directly call a hit on Costello as he was a commissioned member. Thus, cunningly he started cozying up to family members and building a rapport with them, mainly by helping them when they needed money with the promise that the favor would be returned later. He had not rotted 10 years in prison just to take orders from Costello. Genovese had cruel plans. Keep watching to know what Genovese had in his head. Assassination attempt on Costello. This is for you, Frank. Hearing this, Costello turned around just in time to dodge the bullet. Shockingly, the bullet grazed the side of Costello's head. Where did the bullet come from? Who shouted at Costello's back? Well, Genovese, blinded by the hunger for power, hired a hitman, Vincent Chin Gigante, to kill Costello. As Costello was walking in the lobby of a Manhattan apartment, Vincent came up from the back with a gun in his hand. Just before taking his shot, Gigante, in his high spirits, committed the mistake of warning Costello. If Gigante hadn't spoken out before firing, Costello would surely have died. Seems like he had the right amount of luck by his side that day. Gigante faced a mob trial since he had tried to assassinate the mob boss. Costello, however, chose not to identify his killer and kept loyal to the Code of Omerta. This shows the depth of his wisdom and morals. But experiencing this near-death experience was too much for Costello. His psychiatrist had also previously advised him to step back from the intense gang activities as they were taking a toll on his health. After the assassination attempt, he decided to finally step down. After a series of discussions with Genovese, they settled upon an agreement that Costello would hand over the control of the mob to Genovese. In return, he would get to keep his businesses and gambling operations. Although Costello lived the last years of his life as just a family soldier, he was praised everywhere he went as the mob boss who built the Cosa Nostra. His legend as the true Godfather lives on to this day. What are your thoughts about Costello and the way he went about the mob business? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos.